The Beast of Both Worlds by Tom G. H. Adams. Since the time my first memory coalesced like a planetoid forming, the cartilage temple had been my sanctuary. Passing through its gristled gates and hyaline arches, the skeenoids beckoned with their siren song. There they would give me succour from Sarkis mammaries, and I would suckle the ambrosial milk, my voracity only satisfied when I reached satiation. They gave of their milk freely, but it wasn't until my initiation that I was given blood to imbibe. There was a cost, but it was not mine to bear. In this respect, selfishness ruled, but there would come a time when it was my turn to make sacrifice. The Drenathold assured me of this. The future is an unfathomable thing for an initiate, the only certainty being that a role, some say an ordinance, would be assigned. What was the purpose of this destiny? Along with a billion others of my kind, to foment the great act of uncreation, that antipathetic state constructed from labyrinthine complexities known as works of power. There could be no higher honour. Mathanon! The voice uttering my name was enticing, yet had authority. Ever since my ascent to the dominions, the Drenathold had warned me not to trust these voices. "Do not let them deflect you from your true course," they would say. But this call from beyond promised something unique, something that remained an aching desire during the eons of my traversal through the realms. I would risk all for such a reward. So it was that when the gateway in the 33rd Dominion opened, I slipped through. The agony of dematerialization and transposition was normal. The circumstances of my emergence were not. Instead of an entrance befitting a Lord of Chaos, I found myself bound by crimson bands of entrapment. I writhed in their grip, but each second spent struggling drew the restraints tighter. The one binding my neck prevented me from drawing breath, my tormented roar cut short by its constriction. I had been played like a fool. "Mathanon," the figure below said, "do not fight me. You are strong, but the crimson bonds are stronger. They use your own power against you." It was a human voice. This, together with the overpowering stench of a poisoned world, confirmed that someone had summoned me to the third stone from Sol. She stepped forward, a minute anthropoid before my giant form. I stood naked and monstrous in the candlelight. Her skin was wan and grotesque in its smoothness, stretched as it was over a flimsy skeleton. The urge to crush her like a bug was overwhelming, but I resisted. My bonds made the desire a futile one, but how I raged within. "You believe yourself deceived, but I tell you, great Mathanon, that your reward is here." She turned her hornless head to the side in a casual manner, my eyes following the direction. Fire ignited in the molten crucible of my heart as I saw a magnificent body chained to the wall. "A skeenoid," I said. "Look closer. It is the one who suckled you at the birth of time." It was true. I recognized the unique anatomy, tasted the sweet pungency diffusing from its glands. The human had laid an elaborate trap. "You yearn for its milk and blood, don't you, Lord of Chaos? How long is it since you partook of its sacred fluids?" An involuntary pining noise escaped my constricted throat. The enchantress, little more than a girl, had subdued me. As if to accentuate her victory, she approached the skeenoid and lifted a bloody organ from the bowl perched on her altar. It looked like a beast's liver, umber, raw and dripping. She extended both hands, and the closest thing I knew to a mother leaned forward, taking it from her. The skeenoid lifted its head backwards, and the flesh disappeared down its gullet, causing its wasp-thin torso to bulge with engorgement. "You see what I can offer you," the human said. "Do you want to hear what I require?" "I should like to learn with who I am." My voice was cut short by the bond tightening round my throat. I gagged. "Who I am
stealing."
The words came out ragged. She laughed, a condescending, sneering sound. "Ha ha! You think you can entrap me with such a simple ruse? No, Armathanon, you shall not discover my name, but at least I will allow you the dignity to speak." She waved her 5-membered hand, and my neck bond loosened a talon's length. I inhaled a deep gulp of the smoke-filled air and grunted in satisfaction. "Your effigies do not do you justice," she said after a time. "Never have I beheld such intricate horns on a denizen of the realms, and I have seen many." It was a boast of sorts, yet I perceived from the manner of my summoning and the way she carried herself that she was no novice.
"You wish to parley?"
I said. Viscous balls of mucus dripped from my jaws, making the position I held in this deal obvious. The prospect of my skeenoid's fluid was a motivation undreamt of. She knew this. She smiled again. "I have a rival. His power may be equal to mine. If not, it soon will be."
"You want him dead?"
"Yes, but he deserves a quick end. I would also have him understand why he has to die."
"It is a simple thing to do,"
I said, closing my third eye, trying to detect subterfuge. I found none. "Not so simple," she replied. "Otherwise I would have executed him myself. He has protection." The subtle shift of expectation unsettled me.
"Who?"
"You have heard of the Sathanos?" My tail pounded on the stone floor.
"There are but two. One of the original 3 was banished for insurrection in the First Dominion."
"Basquiat has returned. I'm surprised you weren't told of it." The hierarchy should have informed me. My ignorance put me at a disadvantage again, but I let it pass.
"Not so easy, then."
"The challenge is too difficult?"
"I did not say that."
My pride was revealed, and the supremacy remained hers. She dipped her hand into the bowl again and lifted a mass of entrails. The skeenoid mewled with longing. She ate them with even greater speed than the liver. The enticement was unbearable.
"It shall be done,"
I said. Then, looking down at the crimson bands,
"However, I am restricted."
"Give me your oath."
"I swear it."
She had me. A lord of chaos cannot break its promise. The sorceress bands uncoiled like serpents and fragmented into motes of dust.
"Where is your adversary located?"
I asked. "In the star's abode."
"His name?"
"Nephus." The name meant nothing to me.
"I will need an hour."
"You have 30 minutes, if that. Nephus already senses the disquiet in the ether." I nodded, looking upward, smelled the air, and dematerialized. The journey across the realms was excruciating in its demand. The haste required for the enchantress' task demanded it. I emerged, disoriented, in the entranceway to the warlock's abode on the black side of a great mountain. Shattered scree and dismal grey boulders littered the slope below, while a hurricane gale blew swarming horizontal welts of rain into the cave mouth. I didn't feel the icy darts of precipitation as they ricocheted off my hide, but an unfamiliar shard of negativity twisted in my gut. This was to be the most formidable of battles, and my strength was at a low ebb. I hoped that surprise was still on my side. It was my only superiority. I invoked concealment and stepped through the black maw ahead, sensing the cavern sides humming with unhallowed energy. The walls would not permit me to penetrate through them. Millennia of existence had given time for my stature and presence to increase to an extreme magnitude. This was not an advantage. I needed stealth. If I could not steal myself in, then I would have to rely on force. I sensed a powerful entity up ahead, brooding in the bowels of the mountain. I summoned what potency remained and launched myself down a fissure. Down and yet further down I fell, until I smashed like a meteor through the ceiling of a vaulted chamber. I landed in Nephus' inner sanctum, an avalanche of rock accompanying the terror of my entrance. Nephus was on the floor, spread-eagled, his face aghast. Basquiat was nowhere to be seen. But a flicker in the mage's eyes gave me warning. It was insufficient. The weight of a planetoid fell on my back, crushing me to the ground. Arms like oak trunks wrapped around my neck and locked tight. Basgwyr was upon me. He was relying on a test of strength. That was obvious. My gargantuan size was immense, yet he was gargantuan and older. This strategy gave away his weakness. I grasped at the knowledge. My elemental power was superior, having learned from the great principalities of Chil. As his arms tightened, my consciousness probed him. The image of a fragile mirror appeared, indistinct and shimmering. I understood that my strength was fading to a candle glow with each passing second. Basgwyr wrestled my body, throwing it against the cavern wall and bringing down another rain of stone blocks. I reached through the debris for him, but his fist grasped one of my horns, and with the force of a maelstrom wrenched the thing free from its root. Pain as I had never known racked me as lifeblood gushed from the open wound in my head. Basgwyr anticipated victory, and raised himself to full height. His roar of triumph blasted the cavern, and was heard across the mountain range. Storytellers wrote of this night with shaking quills as they recalled the moment of Basgwyr's final arrogance and ensuing doom. A pinprick of light remained in my astral vision, but beyond it I could see a looking-glass. It was all I needed. I braced myself for one final outrush of power, invoked the elements and shot a bolt of dark energy at the mirror of Basgwyr's essence. I saw it smash into a billion fragments. Then all was black. I slept a syncopic slumber. It could have been an hour. It could have been 100 years. Both time spans are an eyelid's blink to one such as I. When I awoke, it was to rebirth, thrust into an austere world, cold and unyielding. I drew breath and immediately felt her nearness. The skeenoid. I rooted and found her nipple, sucking hard in desperation. The joy was unimaginable. "You like your reward?" It was the enchantress.
"Leave us,"
I said. She receded, respecting my desire to feed and to receive solace. A time later, I rose, satiated and in full vigour. I staggered, unbalanced, and swept a claw over my damaged head. The horn was growing again. By its length I understood the passage of time to be decades rather than centuries. I found the enchantress in her sanctum. Time had treated her well. In fact, she looked as if the years had fallen from her rather than multiplied.
"You have grown in strength,"
I said. She turned, a slow, secret smile on her face. "I am transcendent. You served my purpose well, Overlord, exceeding even my own expectations."
"I failed you."
"It is true. You did not extinguish Nefa's life. At first I considered him too dangerous to live. But when my acolytes recovered his drained body, I resolved upon another purpose. With Basgwyr destroyed, his defences left him bare, and his power available for stripping and absorption." I followed her gaze to a suspended cage. Within it, blackened and twisted, half melded with the coarse wire, was the writhing form of the mage. He was little more than a skeleton. He seemed to sense me, and lifted his head.
"Let me die."
It was less an act of defiance, more one of inevitability, but I reached out a claw and touched him through the mesh. The enchantress saw what I was doing too late. "Don't!" Nefa's body turned to powder before her eyes, a draught of air scattering the particles until nothing remained. "You are a fool!" she raged. "How dare you show him pity? This will slow my advancement."
"Expediency, not pity,"
I replied.
"It is not profitable that a mortal tip the scales of influence so."
"I could have been supreme."
"And may yet be so. The time is not propitious, however. The goal of uncreation takes precedence, and your rise at this juncture would be an obstacle."
I allowed myself a look of amusement.
"It is ironic that I have actually saved you. Those more powerful than I would have acted with greater severity if I had not taken away the source of your power.
She fumed, but held herself in. The impotent can also be wise. I have known loss today, she said, but you have lost more. A sharp gesture of dismissal with her hand preceded the desolate shriek of the skeenoid. Its life was snuffed out in an instant. I uttered a roar of despair, burying my fist into the wall, scattering her artifacts and vials across the room. I tore down vast bookshelves holding grimoires and laid waste to her sanctum. My exertions left me spent. The enchantress stood, unperturbed and mocking. "You are not the only one to tip the scales of justice," she said. I looked at her with eyes as hot as coals, but she relied on my oath to keep her safe from vengeance. The fulfilment of my charge also freed me of further obligation. I ascended from the room, breaking through the rafters and destroying the last vestiges of her habitation. I ruminate often of my loss. The enchantress and I will meet again. Of that I am sure. The Drenathold warned me of sacrifice. I sometimes wish it was my existence that was snuffed out, but that blessing will only come on the day of uncreation.
May it come soon.